Okay, good day everyone. I thought I'd take a moment just to introduce the new quad in my fleet. So I picked this little bad boy up for $50, believe it or not. So that's not too bad for essentially a full quad, aside from a couple of other little bits and pieces and a pretty extensive repair job. So I'll take you through those now. So what actually came with the quad was the frame itself, and these four motors, this camera, which I've been unable to identify, it doesn't have a name on it. Inside we had a flight controller, no receiver, the ESC, and a burnt out VTX. So this, I suppose what I had to do initially was pretty much a complete tear down and then rebuild. So what I did was just took everything apart. The VTX was wired directly to the camera, which is not a setup that I'm a big fan of. I think it's pretty messy, plus you lose out on that OSD functionality. So I got rid of that pretty much straight away, and then just proceeded to essentially desolder the rest of it. What ended up happening was discovered pretty quickly that the VTX that came with the quad was burnt out. So swapped that for this VTX, which I had lying around, which is a Eachine ATX 03. The A stands for audio, which is unfortunately not smart audio. This was bought before I had any real idea about what I was doing, and wanted to use a microphone. So the A, the audio, enables the microphone use. I did think for a little bit yesterday that I could use that wire as smart audio, but there's just no dice. There's no two ways about it. It's just a dumb VTX basically. So remove that audio wire, obviously the other two wires that would normally go into a camera, and then parked it on a little shelf at the rear of the quad. And I think that location suits it pretty well. One thing that I did notice that came with the quad was the VTX, which is pretty much the same. It came with a VTX 03. It had this little piece of heat shrink over the UFL connector. So I've done that on this one. I thought that was a fantastic idea. I've always had a problem with UFL connectors. I find that they just fall off, or they're not durable, they're not resilient, they don't survive crashes, and you end up possibly losing a VTX as a result of a connector becoming disconnected. So yeah, big fan of that idea, and I think I'll use it on from here forward if I have a UFL connector. So the other thing that was wrong with this quad was that only 3 motors worked. So when I initially powered it on with a battery, after a kind of a reassembly, or a pretty quick reassembly to get it into a functional state, then no motors worked, and then eventually got 3 motors working, and discovered kind of what the problem was. There was just this dodgy soldering job on the ESC. So for instance, that soldering job there is from the former owner, and on this number 2 motor over here, I've resoldered it on. So I thought it might be something simple. I actually thought it was going to be the ESC protocols. Messing around with them, still couldn't get that fourth motor to work. So luckily I was just shifting the ESC around or something, and this wire just fell off. So that's what happened with that, and then from then I was able to kind of resolder it back on, and everything worked, which was a good result, good turnout. Probably something I should have checked for sooner rather than messing around with the ESC protocols and the rest of it. However, I suppose you kind of get that. That's one thing that I didn't actually tear down and rebuild was the ESC. So pretty happy that it turned out that way. Obviously happy. Now in terms of the receiver, I've stuffed a seemingly gigantic XSR in there above the flight controller. It really kind of takes up a lot of space. I use the XSR on my 5 inches and it seems pretty small. Or indeed, I got it for my 5 inches because it was small. But yeah, it's not going to work in these. My other quad, my Alien over here, do have an RXSR. It's tucked up the back there, so you can see, like, you know, barely any impact on the overall size whatsoever. So as soon as I get another RXSR, I'll whack that on. Now the other thing was that the props on this are actually reversed. This came from the original owner as well. So the XSR is actually mounted backwards, if you like. The antennas face forward, so it's towards the camera, and so I've stuck them onto the arms in this faction, and it's kind of swept back aerodynamic antenna mounting system, if you like. Anyway, so that's a pretty broad overview. We'll see how it rocks tomorrow. Going flying pretty early in the morning. Gonna rip into a couple of small spaces, and we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't fall out of the sky, because I'm running this bad boy on it as well. So this gigantic 5S battery. That 5S was originally bought for the Alien. It's pretty much the only low capacity battery that I have. It's an 850, so it's still pretty large, and it's certainly the only battery or only couple of batteries I have for the Nexty 30. So that's going on there, and we'll see how it goes. So suppose I could start a poll about what would happen to it. I don't think I'll do that in reality, but there is a lot of speculation about how well it's going to fly. These are basically the cheapest components that you're ever going to find on a quad. No name camera, outdated Eachine VTX without functionality, without smart audio functionality, a clone of a clone of a clone flight controller, and an ESC. Like, I've seen the same pattern being advertised as like 5 or 6 different names. So trying to get documentation for that was an absolute nightmare, and indeed, like, that's one of the reasons why I had so much trouble wiring it up. It still doesn't seem to have telemetry working, but I think on a quad like this, it's just not going to happen. So hopefully in the future, what I did with the telemetry was actually you can see this yellow wire here in the center. So that's currently wired onto the LED port, which has been repurposed into a soft serial, and then that soft serial has been reassigned or been assigned to work S port. So still nothing so far, but we'll see how that goes in the future. Anyway, so that's the little kind of cheap ass quad that may or may not can. And we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't burn up in flames tomorrow, but you never know. So we'll see what happens. I'll get back to you tomorrow with a bit of DVR. Obviously no HD footage on this, but we'll see how it goes. Be good to get into the air with the 3-inch again until my Alien gets sorted out. So there we go. Thanks for watching.